Her tail sent me crashing into the throne, and the alien king declared, "He fits." The palace of the alien king was unlike anything the human had ever seen. The walls glowed with a faint blue light like crystals breathing with a hidden pulse. Tall pillars reached into the shadows above, carved with strange symbols that twisted in and out of focus when he tried to read them. At the far end of the hall stood the throne, massive and ancient, shaped from a single block of black stone with golden veins running through it. Around it, hundreds of alien guards stood in silence, their eyes shining, their spears aimed forward. The air was heavy, charged with fear and judgment, and in the middle of this terrifying hall stood one human, chained at the wrists, dragged before a ruler of another world. He had no idea how he had ended up in this place. One moment he had been running from patrols in the forest, trying to find a way back to his ship, and the next he was surrounded, captured, and thrown into the heart of the alien kingdom. Now, as he was pushed forward, the alien crowd hissed, their strange tails flicking back and forth in disgust. He was not welcome here. To them, he was nothing more than a trespasser, a thief who dared to walk where no human should. The king sat high above on the throne, his body massive and crowned with a headdress of glowing metal. His eyes were cold and sharp, his skin marked with silver scars that seemed to shine like stars. His voice echoed through the hall, deep and steady. "You bring me this human," he said, staring at the prisoner with disdain. "Why does he still breathe?" The guards pushed the human down to his knees. Pain shot through his legs as the stone floor dug into them. He wanted to speak, to explain he meant no harm, but the words died in his throat. The silence was crushing, broken only by the soft swish of alien tails moving behind the nobles who watched. Then came her. The princess. She stepped forward from the crowd, her golden armor catching the light of the crystals. Her tail was long and powerful, lined with delicate scales that shimmered like fire. She walked slowly, her steps firm, her gaze steady on the human. He felt her eyes studying him, measuring him like a puzzle that did not belong in this hall. "Father," she said softly, though her voice carried across the chamber. "Perhaps there is more to him." The king narrowed his eyes. "More? He is weak. He is human. He has crossed the line of our world and must pay with his life." The human's chest tightened. He looked around, trying to find an escape, but every exit was blocked. The guards stood like statues, their spears lowered just enough to remind him what would happen if he tried to move. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the order that would end his life. And then it happened. The princess moved closer. She circled the human like a predator studying prey. He shifted uneasily, his chains rattling. Her tail swayed behind her, sharp at the end, restless as if it carried its own thoughts. In a moment too fast to stop, the tip of her tail whipped across the floor. It struck his side with unexpected force. The blow sent him stumbling backward. His body twisted, his arms flailing as he tried to catch himself. But there was nothing to grab, no hand to pull him back. He crashed against the steps of the throne, rolled, and fell into the massive seat itself. The hall went silent. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The human sat on the throne, his chest heaving, his hands shaking against the chains. He expected to be torn apart in an instant. But something strange happened instead. The black stone beneath him glowed faintly, the golden veins lighting up as if alive. A low hum filled the air, and the air seemed to grow warmer. The alien nobles gasped. Some stepped back in shock. The guards froze, their spears trembling. The princess stared wide-eyed, her hand rising to her lips. The king stood slowly, his eyes burning with something the human could not understand. He raised his staff and struck it once against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. "He fits," the king said. His voice carried to every corner of the hall. "The throne has spoken." The words were impossible. The aliens began whispering, their tails lashing with confusion. The throne was sacred, meant only for one who belonged to the royal line. No outsider had ever touched it and lived. Anyone unworthy should have been burned alive by its power. Yet here was a human sitting in it, glowing with its light, untouched and unharmed. The human sat frozen, not knowing whether to rise or stay still. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing with fear and disbelief. He had not chosen this. He had not wanted this. And yet fate had dragged him into the throne of a foreign king. The king's words still hung heavy in the air, sealing his place in this strange hall. The silence of the crowd turned into a roar of voices, some screaming for his death, others crying out in fear, and a few bowing as if to a sign from the gods. And through it all, the human realized something terrifying. He was no longer a prisoner. He was something else entirely, something the aliens had never expected. The glow of the throne faded slowly, but the memory of it lingered in every alien eye. The human had not burned, had not screamed, had not turned to ash. Instead, he sat alive, his hands trembling as though he had touched something far greater than he could understand. The nobles shouted over one another, their voices sharp and filled with fear. Some pointed claws at him, demanding his execution before the throne cursed them all. Others whispered that the old prophecy was true, that the throne would one day accept an outsider when the kingdom stood at the edge of change. The king silenced them with a single gesture. His staff hit the floor again, the sound like a crack of stone. All fell quiet, though tails flicked in unease across the hall. His voice rumbled low, carrying more weight than the walls themselves. "The throne has spoken," he said, "but we will know if it is truth or trick." He stared at the human who still sat frozen in the throne, unable to rise. The chains clinked softly when he shifted, his wrists raw from the metal. He wanted to shout, to beg for freedom, but fear kept him silent. He had no allies here. Only the princess watched him with strange eyes, as though she was trying to see something no one else could. "Remove his chains," the king ordered. The guards hesitated. None wanted to touch him now, not after the throne had lit beneath him. But disobedience was worse. 2 guards stepped forward, their spears trembling slightly in their hands, and unlocked the chains. The iron fell away, heavy against the stone floor. The human rubbed his wrist, staring up at the towering figure of the king. "You will face the trials," the king said. "The throne accepts none who cannot survive them. If you fail, you die. If you succeed, we will know why the throne chose you." The hall erupted again, nobles hissing, claws raised, but the king's voice was law. The human's chest tightened. Trials? He was no warrior, no chosen hero. He was just a man who had wandered too far. But in the alien king's eyes there was no mercy, no space for refusal. Guards dragged him from the throne and led him through a long passage, the walls glowing faintly with strange runes that seemed alive. The princess followed behind, her tail swaying in rhythm with her steps. She said nothing, but he felt her gaze on his back. At the end of the passage, the doors opened into a vast chamber. It was a pit surrounded by high walls, the floor rough and broken with jagged stones. At the center, fire burned inside a ring, casting long shadows. Above, hundreds of alien faces leaned forward, eager to see the test begin. The king's voice boomed from above. "The first trial is endurance. He will stand against the beast of the pit." A roar answered his words, deep and monstrous. From a gate at the far end, chains rattled, and then the beast came forward. It was massive, its body covered in dark scales, its 4 legs ending in claws that scraped sparks against the ground. Its eyes burned red, and its tail cracked like a whip behind it. The human's heart stopped. He had never seen anything like it. The guards shoved him into the pit and locked the gate behind him. He stumbled forward, nearly falling onto the sharp stones. He looked around wildly for a weapon, but the pit was bare. The beast roared again, its mouth opening wide enough to swallow him whole. The crowd cheered, their voices echoing. This was entertainment for them, a test of blood. The human's chest rose and fell quickly, his breath short. He was not built to fight monsters. He was not trained for survival in alien arenas. He was nothing more than a man with 2 hands and fear in his veins. The beast charged. Dust rose beneath its claws, the ground shaking with each step. The human turned and ran, the crowd erupting in laughter at his desperation. He darted toward the wall, hoping to climb, but the stones were too smooth. The beast's roar grew closer, hot breath burning against his back. And then, something strange happened again. As the beast leapt, jaws wide, the human's body moved without thought. A pulse ran through his skin like the hum of the throne. His hands shot up, catching a jagged piece of stone, and he swung it with desperate strength. The rock struck the beast's face, and a flash of golden light burst from the stone. The creature screamed, recoiling in pain. The crowd fell silent. The human dropped the stone, his heart pounding. He did not know how he had done it. The rock had glowed in his hands as though it carried the same energy as the throne. The beast circled him now, blood dripping from its snout, its eyes filled with rage. Again it charged, but this time the human felt the energy before it came. His body moved faster than he thought possible. He rolled aside, grabbing another stone, and again the glow lit his hand. With a desperate cry, he slammed it into the beast's side. The light flared brighter, and the creature fell with a roar that shook the pit. Silence, then shock, then whispers. Above, the king stood, his eyes wide. The princess leaned forward, her lips parting in awe. The nobles stared in disbelief. A human, surviving a beast that had killed warriors of their kind, not only surviving but glowing with the throne's strange power. The beast lay still. The human dropped the stone, his chest rising and falling, sweat dripping down his face. He looked up at the king, at the endless sea of alien eyes. He had not wanted this trial, had not asked for it, but something inside him had answered it all the same. The king lifted his staff slowly. "The throne does not lie," he said. "The first trial is past." The crowd erupted into chaos again, voices clashing, tails lashing. But above it all, the human felt only one thing: fear. For if this was only the first trial, what would the next bring? The pit still smelled of smoke and blood. The beast's body was dragged away by guards, its claws leaving deep scratches across the stone floor. The human stood in the center, his chest rising and falling as if every breath weighed 1,000 pounds. His arms trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes never left the throne above him. The king had watched without blinking, his face unreadable, his staff gripped like it held the answer to everything. The nobles still argued, some shouting that the trial was false, others claiming the throne had made its will known. Through it all, the princess had not spoken. She had remained near the edge of the pit, her golden armor reflecting the firelight, her long tail twitching in restless rhythm. Her gaze stayed on him, sharp and curious, as if she saw something no one else dared admit. When the human was finally led from the pit, the guards holding him at spear's edge, the princess moved forward. She blocked their path with a single sweep of her tail. The guards froze, uncertain, lowering their heads slightly in respect. "Leave him," she ordered. Her voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that made the air still. The guards obeyed, stepping back. The human, confused, looked at her warily. Sweat still clung to his skin, dust in his hair, blood from small cuts marking his face. He felt weak, but his heart beat faster when her golden eyes locked with his. "Walk with me," she said. He hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to trust her. She was alien, royalty, dangerous in every sense. But he had no choice. Alone he would be lost. Together perhaps he could understand why fate had pulled him here. The princess led him through winding corridors away from the noise of the hall. The walls were quieter here, the glow dimmer, as though this place was meant for secrets rather than trials. At last she stopped inside a chamber lined with carved stone. Symbols glimmered faintly, their shapes spiraling in circles. In the center stood a pool of clear water that reflected the light. She turned to him, her tail curled behind her like a question mark. "Do you understand what happened?" He shook his head slowly. "I do not. I only fought because I had no choice. I should be dead." Her eyes narrowed, but not in anger, more in thought. "The throne chose you. It gave you strength. The beast should have torn you apart, yet you lived. Tell me, human, who are you really?" His throat tightened. He wanted to shout that he was no one, that he had not asked for this, that he had only been searching for a way back home. But her gaze demanded honesty. He lowered his head. "I am no warrior. I am no chosen one. I was lost, captured. That is all." She studied him for a long moment. Her tail flicked once, then stilled. "The throne does not make mistakes." Her words sent a shiver through him. He remembered the heat of the stone under his body, the golden glow that spread across his hands. The way the beast had fallen when he struck, it had not felt like his strength. It had felt borrowed, as if something deep in the throne had reached into him and claimed him. "Why defend me?" he asked finally. "You could have let me die in the pit. It would have been easier." Her lips curved into something close to a smile, though it carried no joy. "Because my tail struck you first. Because fate is not accident. And because—" She stopped, her golden eyes softening for a brief second. "Because I want to see what happens next." The chamber grew quiet again. The human's heart raced. He could not tell if she was his protector or his jailer. Perhaps she was both. But their fragile moment broke when the sound of footsteps filled the corridor. A group of alien nobles entered, their armor dark, their tails rigid with anger. One stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Princess, step aside. That creature does not belong here. The throne is testing us, not him. He must die before he curses us all." The princess's tail lashed once across the floor, the sound like a whip. "He will not be touched," the noble snarled. "You defy the council? You would protect a human against your own blood?" Her golden eyes narrowed. "I protect what the throne has chosen." The guards hesitated, their hands gripping their weapons, but none dared strike the princess. The human stood frozen, caught between their rage and her defiance. He had no weapon, no way to defend himself. Only her tail moved before him like a shield. Finally, the nobles stepped back, but not in surrender. Their eyes burned with promise. If he survives the next trial, princess, his blood will stain these stones. Not even you will save him. They left, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. The silence that followed was heavier than before. The princess turned back to him, her gaze still steady. The trials will not stop. They will push you until you break. If you survive, the throne will claim you fully. And if that happens, no one will ever let you leave this world. Her words chilled him. He had thought survival would bring freedom. Instead, it brought deeper chains. He wanted to deny it, to walk away, to find his ship and flee. But her eyes held him in place as if she already knew he would not escape. In that moment, the human realized the truth. He was no longer fighting only for his life. He was caught between the throne, the king, and the princess herself. And one day soon she would have to choose between her people and him. And he feared her choice might decide not only his fate, but the fate of two worlds. The palace halls were alive with whispers. After the pit trial, nothing was the same. Wherever the human walked, alien eyes followed him. Some burned with hatred, others with fear, and a few with strange reverence. His survival had broken the old order. He was not supposed to live. He was not supposed to glow with the throne's power. Yet here he was, walking under guarded watch, a living contradiction to everything the kingdom believed. At night, when the halls quieted, he heard voices beyond the walls. Plots, sharp and urgent, carried through the cracks. He could not understand all of the alien language, but the tone was enough. They wanted him dead. The throne had chosen him, but the nobles had not. The princess stayed near him often, though she spoke little. Her presence alone kept the guards from striking. Her tail moved restlessly when she stood close, a silent warning to anyone who thought of challenging her. The human felt both protected and trapped by her. He knew without her his body would already be cold on the stone floor. One evening the king announced a feast. The entire palace gathered in the great hall. Long tables stretched beneath crystal lights, food steaming from golden trays, the air filled with music that carried a sharp metallic edge. The human was forced to sit near the throne, close enough for all to see him, close enough for all to judge. The princess sat beside him, her expression calm, but her tail curled tightly around her chair. The king raised his staff and silence fell. "Tonight we honor strength," he declared. "Tonight we see if the throne's choice holds weight. The human has passed the first trial. He has endured. But fate is not decided in a single moment. It is forged in many." The words echoed across the hall, heavy with warning. The nobles drank deeply from their cups, their golden eyes never leaving the human. He shifted uneasily, aware of their stares, aware of how small and out of place he looked among them. When the feast began, he tried to eat, but the food tasted strange, bitter against his tongue. He set the plate aside, the unease in his chest growing. Around him, laughter rose, sharp and cruel. The music grew louder. The princess leaned close, whispering under her breath, "Do not trust their kindness. Watch every hand." The warning came too late. In the middle of the feast, a sudden scream tore through the air. The human turned just in time to see a noble spring from the shadows, blade in hand, his tail whipping for balance. The weapon flashed toward him, aimed straight for his chest. Time slowed. The human's body froze, panic filling every nerve. He could not move, could not think. But the throne's energy surged again, uncalled, burning beneath his skin. His arm shot up on instinct, and the blade struck against an invisible barrier of light that burst from his palm. The sound cracked like thunder. The assassin flew backward, slammed into a pillar, and collapsed. The hall erupted in chaos. Nobles shouted, guards rushed forward, and tails whipped violently in panic. The glow around the human's hand faded slowly, leaving only silence and the echo of what had happened. The king rose from the throne, his eyes sharp, his voice shaking the walls.
"Enough!"
His staff struck the floor and the noise died instantly. He looked down at the fallen noble, then at the human, who sat trembling with shock. The throne shields him. The throne protects him. This is no accident, but even as he spoke, the nobles hissed among themselves. Their fear turned to fury. One shouted from the back, "The throne is corrupted. This is a trick. He must be destroyed before the kingdom falls." Others joined, their voices rising, their hands pounding against the table. The air grew dangerous, heavy with rebellion. The princess stood suddenly, Her tail lashed once against the stone floor, the sound silencing many. "He lives because the throne wills it," she declared. Her voice was firm, her golden eyes burning with defiance. "Strike him again and you strike the throne itself." The hall froze. No one dared move. The human looked at her, his chest still heaving. For the first time since his capture, he felt a strange pull toward her. Stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. She was not only defending him, she was binding her fate with his. But in the shadows he saw something else. The way some nobles leaned close together, whispering with venom. The way their eyes flicked to him like hunters waiting for another chance. The betrayal was not finished. The feast was only a cover. That night when the hall emptied, he found himself alone in a narrow corridor, the silence pressing hard against his ears. Then from the darkness, footsteps approached. He turned quickly, his hands tightening, but no guard appeared. Instead, a figure cloaked in black stepped forward, a dagger gleaming faintly. "You should not be here," the voice hissed. "The throne may protect you now, but it cannot protect you forever." The dagger lifted and the human's heart raced. The energy within him flickered, but weaker this time, slower to answer. He stumbled back, fear gripping him tighter than before. The blade was raised high when another sound filled the corridor, the crack of a tail striking stone. The cloaked figure dropped instantly, the dagger clattering to the floor. Behind him stood the princess, her golden armor shining even in the dark. Her tail hovered just above the fallen assassin's throat. Her voice was ice. "You forget who I am." She looked at the human, her eyes sharp but steady. "This will not stop. They will keep coming. And soon you will have to choose. Fight as the throne's chosen or fall as a man lost." The human stood frozen, the glow in his chest faint but real. He realized then that betrayal was not an exception here, it was the rule. And with every step deeper into this palace, he was not only fighting for survival, he was stepping into a game of power that had no exit. The palace did not sleep after the feast. The air itself felt restless, filled with whispers of rebellion and fear. The nobles spoke behind closed doors, their voices hard and angry. The guards walked the halls with sharper eyes, their spears clutched tighter than before. Somewhere deep inside the walls, plans were being made, sharp as blades hidden in the shadows. And in the center of it all stood the human. He had survived the beast. He had survived the assassin's strike. The throne had glowed beneath him, had shielded him, had lent him power he did not understand. Yet with every moment he felt the weight grow heavier. He was no longer only a prisoner or a survivor. He had become something else to them, a threat, a symbol, maybe even a prophecy. The princess stayed close to him now, more than before. Wherever he went, her golden armor flashed in the corner of his eye, her tail sweeping the ground in warning. She did not smile, she did not soften, but her presence was constant. It was a shield he could not explain, a bond neither of them had chosen but both of them could not ignore. Days passed in tension until the king summoned the court again. The great hall filled quickly. Nobles pressed close, their voices sharp with anticipation. The throne loomed above all, its black stone veins glowing faintly as though alive. The king sat upon it, his staff in hand, his eyes dark and unreadable. The human was brought forward once more, though this time without chains. He walked slowly, every step echoing across the chamber. He felt hundreds of eyes on him, heavy with judgment, heavy with hate. When he reached the center, he stopped, his chest tight, his hands trembling despite his effort to appear calm. The king rose, his voice carrying through the hall like thunder. "The throne has spoken," he said. "The trials have tested him. The beast could not kill him. The blade could not cut him. The throne shields him. No more will we call this chance. No more will we call this trick." The nobles shouted at once, voices clashing like a storm. "Lies," some cried. "He is cursed." Others screamed. The floor shook with their fury, tails lashing, claws striking stone. The king silenced them with a single strike of his staff. The sound boomed and silence followed, trembling in its wake. He pointed his staff toward the human. "The throne has chosen, and the throne is law." The words struck the hall like fire. Nobles froze, their faces pale with shock. Some fell to their knees at once, their heads bowed in surrender to the ancient rule. Others stayed standing, their eyes burning with quiet rebellion. But none dared speak against the king, not when his voice carried the weight of the throne itself. The human's heart raced. He could not believe what he was hearing. Chosen? Law? He had not asked for this. He had not wanted this. He had only wanted freedom, a way home. And yet the throne had dragged him into this world and bound him with golden chains of destiny he could not break. The king stepped closer, his tall figure casting a shadow over him. From this day forward you are no prisoner. You are bound to the royal line. The throne accepts you as its own, and so does this kingdom. You belong to us. The human felt the weight of the word sink into his bones. Belong. The word was not freedom, it was possession. It was power, but not his own. He opened his mouth to protest, but the sound never left his lips. The princess moved then, stepping beside him. Her golden eyes burned brighter than ever, her tail curling around him like a silent vow. She looked at her father, then at the court, and her voice rang clear. If he belongs to us, then he belongs to me. Gasps spread through the hall. The nobles stirred in fury, their faces twisted in disbelief. The king stared at his daughter, his expression unreadable, his staff pressed hard against the floor. The silence that followed was longer than any before, sharp enough to cut the air. At last the king spoke, his voice low but final. So it is. The throne has chosen and the bloodline accepts. From this day his fate is tied to ours. He will not leave. He will not be broken. He will stand with us or he will fall with us. The throne does not change its word. The human's chest tightened. Around him the hall exploded again in cries of rage and despair. Some bowed, some cursed, some stormed from the room with tails lashing. But none could undo the king's decree. The throne had spoken, and the throne was law. He looked at the princess, who stood close, her gaze steady. For the first time he understood that her choice had sealed his fate as much as the throne itself. He did not know what path lay ahead, only that he was no longer alone. But as the crowd broke apart and shadows stirred at the edges of the hall, he realized something darker. The throne had declared him chosen. The king had declared him bound. The princess had claimed him as hers, yet none of it meant safety. The nobles' eyes burned with rebellion, and their whispers carried sharper than blades. The king's decree had given him power, but it had also painted a mark on his back. And deep inside, the human knew this was not an ending. It was only the beginning of a war he had never meant to fight, a war that now tied his fate to an alien throne, an alien kingdom, and an alien princess whose choice would change two worlds forever.